got my coffee, I've grabbed a cup of coffee, and today we're going to talk about AirPlay, because AirPlay is a little bit sneaky and we don't always know what it's doing under the hood. So yeah, as they say on YouTube sometimes, let's get into it.
This video is brought to you by Roon 2.0, the revolutionary music player designed for true music fanatics. Click to roonlabs.com for more information.
So basically, AirPlay comes with a hidden gotcha. Not the stream must travel through the phone gotcha, that's well known. I'm talking about a different, less obvious kind of gotcha. Now what follows is based on research conducted by a Darko audio patron, we'll call him Brother Thomas, whose work confirms the long-standing rumours that Apple AirPlay isn't always lossless. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And in certain circumstances, AirPlay compresses the audio down to a lossy format before sending it across to the network streaming endpoint in the Hifi rack. In other words, AirPlay sometimes discards audio data, and it does so without telling us. Super sneaky. So as we progress, things will become a little technical, but hopefully not too technical. And I'll try to keep Brother Thomas's findings as lame and relevant as possible. But as always, if you care not for the last ounce of sound quality when streaming your music, you can click away now. Furthermore, AirPlay has not ever been capable of streaming high-res audio without first downsampling it to CD quality. Now for me, such sample rate down conversion isn't as audible or as troublesome as lossy compression. At least that's the way I hear it. Besides, as I've said many times on this channel before, the high-res content provided by Apple Music, Tidal, Qobuz, Deezer, Amazon Music HD still sits at less than 10% of all titles. So today we concern ourselves with the 99% of all music that's available in CD quality. And it's from this 1644.1 music base that we will dig into when and why Apple's AirPlay transmission scheme gives us lossy compressed audio. So are you sitting comfortably? In which case, let us begin. Now, Apple's AirPlay comes in two flavors, AirPlay 1 and AirPlay 2. Now, AirPlay 1 was introduced in 2010 and essentially allowed users to stream audio directly from their iPhone or iPad or MacBook or iMac wirelessly to an AirPlay-equipped receiver. Now, back then it wasn't called AirPlay 1, it was called AirPlay. But because today we need to cleanly differentiate between AirPlay 1 and AirPlay 2, I'll continue to refer to the original AirPlay as AirPlay 1. Now, one early example of an affordable AirPlay 1 receiver was the Airport Express. Now that could be connected to a DAC over Toslink. However, many hardware manufacturers were quick to add AirPlay 1 compatibility to their streaming products. A few even circumvented, quite sneakily, Apple's own certification process with the Linux-based SharePort plugin. Now, AirPlay 1's first gotcha was that the digital audio stream traveled through the phone or through the iPad on its way to the streaming endpoint. Or if we walk the phone out of network range or turn it off, the music soon stops. I think for me that's one of AirPlay's kind of biggest weaknesses, is that the stream travels through the phone. And the second AirPlay 1 related gotcha was how it impacted the phone's battery life, because essentially, as we'll see, it streams constantly and therefore always activating the Wi-Fi antenna, so transmitting audio constantly. That had a fairly significant impact on the battery runtime of the device sending out that stream. Now, fortunately for audiophile type people, whatever arrived at the phone to be transmitted via AirPlay to the streaming endpoint was essentially converted by Apple AirPlay to CD quality before creating a 2-second buffer, so sending out 2 seconds worth of audio and then continuously streaming thereafter in real time to that AirPlay 1 receiver. Now this is all according to Brother Thomas's findings, and I think we should really note the use here of the word continuously and also the words CD quality. Incidentally, that 2-second buffer is why play-pause actions with AirPlay 1 can sometimes feel a little bit laggy, and also, as we'll see, it's why AirPlay 1 can, but not always, be prone to more dropouts than AirPlay 2, which Apple introduced in 2018. Now, AirPlay 2 took aim at some of the original's gotchas. It was designed to improve the responsiveness of the play-pause actions. It was designed to lower the incidence of dropouts, and it was designed to reduce the impact on the host device's battery runtime. But AirPlay 2 also formally added multi-room support, allowing us to stream many different streams from one device all around the house. And perhaps most importantly, AirPlay 2 would be backwards compatible with AirPlay 1. So an AirPlay 1 transmission could arrive at an AirPlay 2 device without issue, and vice versa. And according to Brother Thomas, AirPlay 2's new and improved streaming mode would see an AirPlay 2 operating iPhone transmit an initial data burst of up to 3 megabytes to the AirPlay 2 receiver in order to kind of get a buffer going, and then stream, and this is crucial, then stream additional data chunks at 10-second intervals, so not continuously. So those intervals tell us, that AirPlay 2 streaming is bursty, it's not continuous. Now, the benefits of AirPlay 2 to battery life are obvious, I think, but I think it raises also an important question. How is AirPlay 2 carrying CD quality data when it's only transmitting 10% of the time? And the answer is, it isn't. Any CD quality stream emanating from an online service, it is transcoded to AAC 256 kilobits per second. And it does that inside the iOS app. So the streaming app does that. And it does that before it's sent off to the receiver. And so essentially what we get is a small hit to audio quality. Now, some people can hear the difference quite clearly between lossless and lossy, and some can't. I'm not here to debate that. We're just here to talk about what Apple AirPlay is doing behind the scenes. Now, crucial to this is that it's not the phone's hardware that essentially determines what goes on. It's the iOS app, right? So we're accustomed to thinking of streaming endpoints as being AirPlay 1 or AirPlay 2. And modern iPhones and iPads are already equipped with AirPlay 2 smarts. So we can assume that our iPad or our iPhone is already AirPlay 2 compatible, right? And many of us already have AirPlay 2 compatible receiving endpoints or streaming endpoints in our hi-fi racks. But there's a fresh wrinkle according to Brother Thomas, because our chosen streaming app's operational mode can also be set to behave as AirPlay 1 or AirPlay 2 by the developer. And this was news to me because I just thought it was set by the hardware, essentially the iPhone or the iPad, and the receiver and the hi-fi rack, and that's all we had to consider. But no, according to Brother Thomas, we need to look at the iOS app or the iPad OS app that we're using to stream from our phone or iPad to the receiver or the streaming endpoint or the network streamer or the network bridge or whatever you want to call it in our hi-fi rack. So if we assume the presence of an iPhone or iPad made in the last 10 years, lossy compression only takes place when an AirPlay 2 app streams to an AirPlay 2 endpoint. An AirPlay 1 app streaming to an AirPlay 2 endpoint will revert to AirPlay 1's real-time continuous streaming mode, and therefore we have no AAC compression. And it's the same if we have an AirPlay 2 app streaming to an AirPlay 1 endpoint. Again, it's a continuous streaming mode, no AAC compression. So if we want to put that more simply, anyone streaming to or from an AirPlay 1 device will always enjoy lossless CD quality streams with their AirPlay interaction. So now comes the million-dollar question. Which apps stream in AirPlay 1 mode and which apps stream in AirPlay 2 mode? Now let's get Roon out of the way because many people use that and they're probably going to fuss over it. Roon streams in AirPlay 1 mode, so you always get CD quality from whatever you're streaming out of Roon across the network into an AirPlay endpoint using Roon. And that's essentially because the Roon developers have coded Roon so that the Roon core streams always in AirPlay 1 mode. However, if we pull up a CD quality stream from Apple Music on, say, an iPhone 13 mini, which I have, and then send that stream to a Win Pro Plus, for example, connected to a Hifi system, the stream will be AAC compressed by Apple Music's iOS app. And that's because Apple Music's app, according to Brother Thomas, operates in AirPlay 2 mode. And so too, unfortunately, does the Tidal iOS app. But Qobuz users can breathe easy right now because the French streaming service's iOS app, at time of taping this, runs in AirPlay 1 mode. And so too do Amazon, Plex and Plexamp, SoundCloud and Spotify. Again, all according to Brother Thomas's research. Now right now, some of you will be thinking, but my phone does multi-room streaming with the Qobuz app, so that must mean it's AirPlay 2. Well, not quite, because multi-room capabilities seem to be set at the hardware level by the receiver and the transmitter. An AirPlay 1 app running on a later generation iPhone or iPad will stream in lossless CD quality to multiple AirPlay 2 endpoints. Confused? Well, thankfully, and this really helped me as well, is that Brother Thomas has kindly summarized his findings in a table. And the bottom line is that basically it's only when the streaming app, the iPhone or iPad that we're using, and the streaming endpoints are all AirPlay 2 equipped or coded that the stream is compressed with a lossy codec down to 256 kilobits per second. Now, Brother Thomas also neatly points out that an iPhone or iPad will indicate an AirPlay 1 connection with a tick inside the iPhone's interface, right? And when there's an AirPlay 2 connection in play, that tick will be surrounded by a solid circle. But be careful though, because this is only what's going on with the hardware, the smartphone and the network endpoint essentially. It tells us nothing about what's going on with our streaming app and which AirPlay version it has been coded to operate in. Now lastly, if you're wondering why we call him Brother Thomas, it's because he is doing God's work. So if you enjoyed this video, then please consider giving us a like down below. If you like my attitude towards these sort of more educational, technical topics, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.